This morning on The Real Story, it's crunch time at the Capitol. We are headed into the last week of session. Lawmakers scrambling to finish the business of the people by Wednesday. This morning, we catch up with House leadership. Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, and House Minority Leader Vince Candelora are our guests. And then analysis from one of our political journalists. CT News Junkie's Christine Stewart will break down the session this coming week and how it all ties into November 2022, a very big election year. It's all today on The Real Story. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Jen Bernstein. The legislative session ends on Wednesday, so now is the mad scramble to get as much done in this short session as possible. At the forefront, putting money back in taxpayers' pockets with budget adjustments in this lucrative budget climate that we find ourselves in for the first time in a long time. That includes the extension of the gas tax holiday until the end of the year, and that's just one of many things lawmakers have on tap. So let's get an update from leaders here. Joining us this morning, Speaker of the House, Democrat Matt Ritter, and House Minority Leader, Republican Vince Candelora. Good morning to you both, and welcome back on The Real Story.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's start with you, Speaker Ritter. This deal was struck with the governor's office as well as leadership, which includes you, I assume. So how did you all come to the conclusion of this really large package of budget adjustments that includes tax cuts?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you have to wait for the final numbers, right? So a lot of the budget evolved over the last couple of months based upon different revenue estimates that we saw. And when we thought we had seen the greatest revenue estimates ever, they got even better. And most importantly, what would help the deal come together was it allowed us to cut taxes even further, right? We are restricted under federal rules because of the stimulus money we received, the ARPA funds we received, from cutting taxes beyond a certain amount. And that amount went from about 180 to closer to 600 in the last 2 weeks. That allows us to provide a child tax payment for individuals up to $250 per child, max at 3 kids. Allows us to do the gas tax. It allows us to do the property tax credit and reduce car taxes in about 75 municipalities.
And I know that Republicans have been pushing for you all to challenge the federal government about that cap so you can give even more tax relief, right, Representative Candelora?
Yeah, I mean, we believe that there's opportunities here to make systemic change in the state of Connecticut, and to restrict us to what the federal government is telling us, I think, is a mistake. And there's been many other states that have sued the government to provide more tax relief. And that's something that we were hopeful for, because we do think that we are going into some difficult times, and we should be looking at broad-based tax relief that's going to help most residents in Connecticut.
Representative Ritter, why the hesitation on that? I think it's somewhat 18 states who have challenged it at this point.
I don't know the exact number. I'd have 2 concerns. One is, when would it be decided, right? You have different circuits, different district courts, the federal level issuing opinions. This ultimately could go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court or to a higher court of appeals. So when do you actually get a final answer? And so let's say we did exceed the cap and the courts were litigating it. I suppose the money's in escrow. Is it pending? There's a practical element to this. So although I think we would have loved to have gone higher and could have had that conversation, we're just not sure how you could take this from a theoretical thing and actually make it a practical thing.
Representative Candelora, I know that the expansion of the gas tax holiday was something that Republicans had proposed last week, extending it until December. So I would assume, are you all happy with that element of the deal?
Yeah, I think there's certainly elements in there that we are pleased with, and that is one of them. I'd like to see it expanded to diesel as well, because we all know that inflation is here and our companies are struggling, and extending it to diesel could help our local businesses. But overall, I think it's an important policy that we do continue beyond July 1st.
Do you think that there's going to be Republican votes in your caucus for this budget deal when it comes to the...
Yeah, I think that we have to see the details, but certainly as we've been working over the last few weeks of session, we've seen initiatives being put up like mental health reforms, especially for our children and adults, that we support, that is going to be in that budget. So there are elements of spending and priorities that are important to us. And it's a matter of seeing this final product and does it have enough for us to support it. So we certainly are reserving judgment until we get that document.
And Speaker Ritter, I know you were saying that this document, I mean, this is going to be starting tomorrow, Monday, hopefully that the document's available, right?
Yeah, I mean, really the hard part is the implementer, right? I mean, you have the numbers, but then you have to draft the verbiage that implements those numbers, and that does take some time for the nonpartisan staff to put together. But the minority leader and I will stay in touch. You know, he'll have thoughts. We're still open to things and maybe adjustments here and there. We worked really closely last year to get that budget together. And, you know, if we have to go our separate ways on the adjustments, we will. But the underlying pinnings of this budget, the foundation of this budget, which is a 2-year budget, still go back to last year. We're not making any changes to ECS funding. We're not cutting programs we all agreed to in a bipartisan way last year. So that's an important thing to note as well.
I need to touch on this because I know I had Senate leadership on last week, and people on Twitter, you know, were upset when I was saying things like the Connecticut's coffers are full, and you know we have this revenue surplus, and because they're pointing to, and we explained this during last week's segment as well, that while we might be getting revenue in and we have a plump rainy day fund, we still have a major pension problem. So, you know, Speaker Ritter, what's the thoughts on that? Because, you know, when you look at our obligations there, it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, look, you have to invest responsibly, right? So what you don't want to do is make a bunch of tax cuts that are not affordable into the future. You want to have sustainable budgets. We still have bond covenants and statutory locks on, for example, income tax that comes in over a certain amount. For those worried at home, are we doing too much on the tax cut side? Are we over appropriating funds? We're still going to put about $2 to $2.5 billion in our rainy day fund. Think about that. We're prepaying over $2 billion into our pension funds, rather. Sorry, the rainy day fund will remain full, and we'll put about $2 to $2.5 billion in the pension funds. So we will now have put over $5 billion, $4 to $5 billion in our pension funds over the last 3 years, making up for a lot of years where legislators were irresponsible. And that all goes back to 2017 and the bipartisan budget, which Vinny and I had maybe different roles back then, but we're still involved in it. And so it shows you how important to work together is. Those ideas came from a lot of negotiations, but those investments in our pension fund, just alone this year, will free up close to $250 million in our budget next year, which, by the way, is also subject to a spending cap. So people are not wrong, but we are making those down payments. And after this budget, our rainy day fund will still be full, the highest dollar amount in the history of the state of Connecticut, and the highest percentage as a total of the overall budget in the history of the state of Connecticut.
Is it still standing? The last time I looked, $3.1 billion? In the rainy day fund?
Yeah, and it can go up. It goes up based upon it's 15% of the overall appropriation, so we'll go up a little higher, but it's about 3.2 probably at the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay, and it gets capped, but you said that can rise and fall.
15% is capped.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Representative Candelora, your thoughts on that? Are we doing enough to address our pension crisis? I mean, Republicans are in favor of tax cuts. In fact, you'd like more tax cuts. So on the other end of that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues here is that as much as we put into the pension fund, the governor with the state workers' contracts managed to spend it all. So we implemented $3,500 bonuses to employees that are going to get calculated into the pension and draw down more on the pension. We've not only have to fund our pension, but make decisions that in the long term aren't going to hurt us. And what's happened since 2017 is we've seen our unfunded liabilities grow from $75 billion to $95 billion. So on one hand, we are putting more money into these accounts, but we have to stop spending it.
All right, let's talk about the coming week. Speaker Ritter, what are some of the priorities that you hope to get done? Obviously, a lot of time is going to be taken up with these budget adjustments, but what else is going to be on tap, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we still have to finish Senate bills basically at this point, right? If a House bill is being launched on the Tuesday, it's got a long shot to get through both chambers. So we got to, still finish what we have left for Senate bills. We got a lot of major pieces of legislation done previously. As the minority leader alluded to, we did the children's mental health bill. We've done some of the environmental bills, some of the priorities. So I think this week you're going to see maybe some smaller bills that matter more individually to legislators per se, and less on the big ticket items. Most of those got punched out, starting last week.
Okay, that makes sense. Representative Candelora, I know you all were also passionate about children's mental health reforms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been plenty of reforms that we've been working on. We're working on juvenile justice and getting that bill through both chambers to try to help, punch down the car theft that we're seeing throughout the state of Connecticut. and put us sort of back on track in that area. And as Speaker Ritter mentions, as we're going forward in the last 3 days, you are going to start to see some of the smaller initiatives that are important to our communities, whether it's dealing with school construction or other type of local projects that we'll probably be debating on the floor.
Okay, and one final question here as we wrap up. It is an election year. Everyone's up for re-election. Speaker Ritter, what are your hopes? I mean, obviously you want to keep the majority next year, but what are your thoughts on the upcoming election? You have a good feeling about it? Are you concerned about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's May, so a lot can happen between now and November, but we're always going to be confident. I think the governor's going to do very, very well. I think he's led the state well, and he'll be the top of the ticket, obviously. We have a lot of retirements, both sides. So one thing that I think you'll see in the House races is there's going to be a lot of new people, maybe 30 to 35 new open seats, right, with retirements. We have a lot of great people that I've met that we've recruited. That'll be new candidates, which I think fit their districts. I'm sure the R's feel the same way. But you know what? We really got to get through Wednesday at midnight. We're all exhausted, and then we'll wake up on Thursday and we'll turn the page to that. There'll be plenty of time for politics. But Connecticut should be proud. Our legislature is part-time. We all have other jobs and responsibilities, yet we managed to get through it. We allow unlimited debate. We do work together the vast majority of the time. And yeah, there will be elections and we'll say things about each other and we'll disagree, but we do try to conduct it as civilly as possible when we're in session.
I know. Am I stressing you both out by mentioning that the election's in November when you're about to
Stress is the wrong word, but we got to get through Wednesday. We still got 3 long days ahead of us.
Yes, you do. Representative Candelora, just on the election, upcoming election, you want to close us out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the tide seems to be better for Republicans in this cycle. We have a lot of candidates that have come forward that are enthusiastic, and it's a matter of continuing to stay on message. We're concerned about the affordability for the state of Connecticut, and I think you'll hear a lot about that in the next 3 days or the next 5 days and all the way through the election cycle.
And then we will also have the conventions coming up. Speaker Ritter, Representative Candelora, always good to have you both on. Thanks for coming on The Real Story. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks.
All right, good luck this week. Coming up on The Real Story, a follow-up conversation with political journalist Christine Stewart. She's going to join us for a wide-ranging conversation at where this session stands right now in not only the House but the Senate as well, and how it plays into the big political year ahead of us. Stay with us.